Hello, fabulous friends and fans. Welcome to this special series where I answer questions that you guys send me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, and of course my website, NadiyaShah.com. I so appreciate your interactions. I try to acknowledge all of them, and they really mean so much to me. Thank you. Thank you for your ideas. Please keep them coming. I have a list. As I've said before, I have a list, and there's a lot of videos to make on that list, and I'm so excited about that. And one by one, I'm sure they'll all get made, and I hope to continue to answer your questions and continue to have this kind of interaction with you. Thank you so much for seeing me as some small part of your sacred journey. And so this particular video is on Mercury retrograde, and this is something I'm asked about a lot, Mercury retrograde, but in particular, I did get a message recently from Teresa, and Teresa actually shared a story that just made me smile. I thought it was so cute. She said that her daughter had been asked out on a date, and it was a Mercury retrograde, and so her daughter was waiting until Mercury went direct before she actually went on this date, and she wanted to know what I thought about Mercury, especially Mercury retrograde in the context of love. So I want to talk first just about what Mercury retrograde is, because a lot of people, I know, and I've seen this so much from people I know, friends, fans, everything. Mercury retrograde comes along and people start freaking out, and they mark a day on their calendar. This is when Mercury goes direct, and that's when I can do all the things that I really want to do, start all the things I want, go shopping again, send a letter, whatever the case may be. What is actually happening during Mercury retrograde? And I've shared this, I know, in the weekly horoscopes in that context, but this is a special series video, so I'll explain it again. Essentially, when a planet goes retrograde, he is moving over a path that he has already walked, he or she. I like to think of the planets as you know, in terms of their ancient mythology. So I like to personalize them, anthropomorphize them, if you will. And so when I think about Mercury, essentially what happens is, imagine that in the sky there is a sidewalk, right? It goes all around the sky. It goes all around the zodiac. And Mercury, you know, is walking along the sidewalk and stops for a second, or maybe before he stops, he's walking down a sidewalk, he gets to a block, and he knows that now he's going to start walking this block, but he's going to have to walk backwards over this block again. The minute that Mercury steps onto that block, onto that street, onto that part of the pathway that he will return to once retrograde, astrologers, we call that shadow. So Mercury has entered shadow. He has entered a part of the street, a part of the block that he will return to once retrograde. And this is when you want to start watching what's happening. And this happens about 3 weeks before Mercury goes retrograde. So 3 weeks before Mercury goes retrograde, he enters shadow. And what happens right around that time as he enters shadow is what is likely going to be returned to in some way, will get its final, or get a burst of clarity, a burst of insight once Mercury goes direct. Because once Mercury enters shadow, 3 weeks later he stops and turns back, right? So now he appears. Ultimately, it's an optical illusion, but astrology, particularly Western astrology, is based on our perception, because really it's based on a worldview that has to do with understanding the individual as the center of the world, really. The center of the community, the center of the nucleus is, the nucleus of the world ultimately is the individual. So because Western culture is very much about free will is prized, possibly one of the most prized, if not the most prized attribute that we have as human beings. So the astrology reflects that. And it is that as we see the sky, so it is that is representing what it is that's happening within us. And so it is that we are assisted in understanding ourselves better and what it is that we can do. So Mercury begins to go backwards, right, over the same pathway. And that's the retrograde. It takes about 3 weeks, comes back to that place where he started shadow, and that is exactly the point where matters that had arisen 6 weeks earlier, you go, oh, wow, okay, this is it. I get it. This is where I'm going. This is what needs to happen. This is what really happened. All of that starts to come up at that time. And then Mercury goes forward in shadow for 3 weeks before he finally goes on a new block, goes to a new street, goes to another part of the zodiac. And so really, yes, Mercury retrograde is 3 weeks. Yeah, you don't really want to start new things if you can help it. However, it isn't just about what's happening in those 3 weeks. You want to watch what's happening before Mercury goes retrograde and afterwards as well, because it is that whole journey that is about reconsidering, revisioning, re-editing, anything that has to do with a you are doing over in terms of what Mercury represents and in terms of the part of the sky that Mercury is in, the part of the sky Mercury is speaking to for you. So I hope that was clear. I tried to draw a visual there a little bit, and I know I took a little bit of a philosophical break, but friends and fans know I have a tendency to do that kind of thing. So in the context of love, now here it is. Here's the thing. Mercury is not particularly a very romantic planet, okay? Mercury is messenger of the gods, has been called. Mercury is very much about mind. It's perception. It's not so much about like belief. If it is like perception that's based in as you believe, so you see, that's more a Jupiterian thing. That's more a Sagittarius thing. It is more, Mercury is more about the actual mental processes. It's more about how you're perceiving the world, how you're understanding the world, the information you're receiving, the communications, the stimulations that you're receiving as well. Mercury is mind as well. Okay, so it's not like higher mind. Again, it's not higher mind, philosophical mind like Sag energy, like Jupiter energy. It's more immediate processes as well. So it's writing. It's not what you're writing about. It's actually writing. It's sharing information. It's not about the slant you're giving that information or the meaning you give to that information. It is the sharing of that information. Mercury also represents siblings, okay? Mercury also represents moving parts, okay? Also covered under Mercury because he moves so quickly. And so these are some of the things that Mercury covers, not particularly romantic things, right? But messages of all kinds. And also with Mercury, it's very much about random interactions because it rules sort of the stimulus that we receive. So it's the people that you sort of run into, it's your neighbors as well, because these are people that you kind of see quite a bit who in some way, sometimes very subtly, depending if you live in a really big city, sometimes it's just sort of a nod to acknowledge them. And sometimes you don't even really know your neighbors. And other places you know them quite well. But it also does rule neighbors because we're sort of interacting with these people and they become part of the busyness as we go about our day and as we go about receiving all kinds of information from the world. And so when you look at these together, on the surface, no, it's not a very romantic vibe, but all of these issues end up being things that you have to consider when Mercury goes retrograde. When Mercury goes retrograde, when Mercury enters shadow, it does become about, okay, do I really want to buy that watch right about now? Do I really want to buy something that has a lot of moving parts? Really? Some people even say cars. I think cars are... Yeah, I can see why. If you're looking at the mechanics of cars, yes, people say don't buy a car during Mercury retrograde. It's also about agreements and contracts, but cars, just to go back a little bit, cars also are ruled by Mars, I feel, because it's about the machinery, it's about the steel as well. But because Mercury also rules agreements as well, not so much like deals that you make, power deals and things like that, financial deals, which is more about Scorpio or Sag energy, 8th house, 9th house energy. It's more about sort of the actual details in the agreements and the contracts as well. And so it's also said not to sign any contracts during a Mercury retrograde. And it's usually not a good idea to get married if you are involving a contract. If you consider your marriage a contractual thing, which is usually the case, not always, but usually the case, then you also want to look at that as well. Here's the thing, where it comes to dating. So all of these topics are covered. If you can't help it, if you have to, like if you get an amazing job offer and you're just like blown away by it, it's a Mercury retrograde, you're told, you got to answer right now. I would say take the job. That would be my advice. Take the job. Just know that once some time has passed, chances are that you will understand what your role is differently. There may be aspects of the contract that aren't clear, so make sure there's some flexibility there as well for you. That's all you want to do. You just want to make sure you have flexibility in terms of actually as you sign agreements. Mercury is also commerce as well. So any kind of buying that has to do with contracts, even houses and things especially, you really want to be careful. Pay attention to the details, but no, you're not going to catch everything. And that's really okay sometimes. Sometimes it can work out very much to your advantage. Depending on what Mercury is doing in your chart, depending on what Mercury is going to do next, it can work very much to your advantage. Sometimes not. Okay, so just be mindful that that is a possibility there as well. Where it comes to romance, if Mercury is moving through your opposite sign, or Mercury is moving through a fellow element to you, and especially 5 signs ahead of you. So, for example, if you are a fire sign, right? Then you want to watch, is Mercury moving through a fire sign? Is Mercury going to be doing this dance in fire signs? That can indicate something about romance. In particular, if you're an Aries, 5 signs ahead of you. So whatever your sign is, whatever element it is, essentially you are the first sign, let's say. So if you're an Aries, the sign, the fire signs, the other fire signs are going to be 5 signs ahead of you and 9 signs ahead of you. And that's true regardless of what sign you are. If you want to know where your other elemental siblings are in the sky, if you will, they're always 5 signs ahead of you or 9 signs ahead of you. And so you want to watch what's happening 5 signs ahead of you. Is Mercury going retrograde 5 signs ahead of you? If that's the case, in a sign that shares your element, you want to watch that. That's going to say something about romance, and particularly dating, and particularly meeting a new person. So if I saw something like that, in particular, Mercury, not so romantic. However, if I saw something like that, I would say, depends how you look at it, right? If you know this person for a while and then they finally ask you out, you can say that this is actually part of a process. If you've hung out with them before, it's just a continuation. Now you're going to get to understand them and see them a little bit differently, a little more deeply. If this is someone brand new who's just kind of showed up and they want to, they've asked you out, you might want to wait, or if you want to go. But just know that more will be revealed once Mercury goes direct, and that you may not be seeing this situation as clearly as you would like, but sometimes that can be a good thing, especially, again, depending on how Mercury is speaking to other planets, how Mercury is speaking to planets in your chart. All of that is going to play a part as well. You also want to look at, and especially, so 5 signs ahead, especially in a dating type of situation, that's what you want to watch. Where it comes to actual love and partnership, that's your opposite sign. And so you want to look at what's happening at the sign directly across the sky from yours. And that is more about sort of the agreements that people make in terms of partnerships that they form. And that becomes a little bit more, it's a little bit more meaningful, if you will, than just dating, of course, as you can imagine. And so this is a time you want to watch as well. As I said, because you don't really want to sign contracts, not really a good time to get married. I would even say, like, let's try and not do it during the shadow either. But because of that, because later on you might find out, hey, the agreements we made, especially whatever's in writing and contracts, maybe adjustments need to be made. Maybe things weren't so clear as well. All of that becomes a possibility. And so it's best to kind of try not to make those types of agreements, especially partnership agreements, if you have Mercury going retrograde in your opposite sign. But this can be really great. It can be really great in terms of renegotiating. Okay, Mercury moving through your opposite sign, but renegotiating in general when Mercury is retrograde tends to be really good, a good use of this energy. But Mercury retrograde in your opposite sign is allowing you to understand love from another perspective, is allowing you to understand your partner from another perspective, is allowing you to get a more full understanding of who you are in the context of love and who it is that you are with and whether this works for you or not. And so in that regard, because this is more about established partnerships, if it was just a dating situation, because I believe that dating is more of a fifth house thing, 5 signs ahead of you kind of thing, I would say that it's not as relevant. However, if you really believe that this is somebody that you could really be serious with, if you feel that you're sort of on that path, that you've attracted somebody that has to do with more about partnership, then you may want to consider postponing that date. However, ultimately, if the asking out has already happened, the connection has already been there. And chances are that if you've been asked out, you're waiting to go out on that date, it's probably not just going to stay there, right? Chances are you're going to call each other, you're going to talk a little bit, you're going to discuss Mercury, you're going to discuss lots of other things. So the connection has already been born. And in that case, I would say trust your circumstances, as I like to say very often. Ultimately, the universe is wise and loving. I love saying that. I believe that. Everything I do is about affirming that in the world. The universe is wise and loving. And so from that perspective, if you can understand how ultimately Mercury is helping you, whether it's in love or in any area of life, it's helping you to understand before you buy something, why are you buying it? Why do you want this? What is this going to do for you? That's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. And to understand ultimately that there's a flow of energy. I believe this very much, especially because Mercury moves so quickly. There's a certain flow of energy. So as you shop, for example, as you shop, know that what you get, you probably will change your mind. I find that's the case for me, is because when I go shopping, as you know, I like being a girl. For regular friends and fans know that. And so part of that means getting to change my outfits a lot. And so I've gone shopping during Mercury Retrograde, and I've worn things in videos during Mercury Retrograde. And then afterwards I've been like, oh, wow, I was really very brave with that, or very adventurous with that, or what was I thinking with that, or that really isn't something I want anymore. I'm never going to wear that. I've had those types of experiences, and I've known other people to have those types of experiences. So that's what I mean, is that you may change your mind. And so when it comes to dating, you are going to get to see who you are in the context of dating from a different angle. You are going to get to see who you are in the context of partnership, and especially when it comes to dating, because ultimately that's what Teresa asked about. I do think that dating is about learning about yourself. It's about understanding what you want. It's about really seeing what's out there and refining ultimately what it is that you're going for. I am very much of the belief that every person you meet, every person who crosses your path, even if it's online, especially now, today, in this day and age, we interact with more people than ever before, even if it's not in person. Like if you're online, if you're open to making friends online, then you usually end up making friends with people all over the world, especially with social networking. However, I would say that really, when it comes to something like dating, because it is about learning about yourself, because it is about figuring out what it is that you like, what it is that you're going for, what characteristics work for you, so that you can slowly be brought into alignment with that right person for you, with that right partner for you, because it's about the experimentation. Try to keep it light, especially in the beginning. And because it's about that, I would say go out on that date, trust the process, know that more will be revealed. Maybe this person will work out differently. But what's really good is once you're on the other side of it, you're able to look at the whole situation and say, okay, wow, this person was way kinder than I thought they were. And what were the signs of that? You get to reconsider. You get to say, okay, yeah, actually I saw signs of that before. That I hadn't appreciated before. Or maybe the person ends up being way worse than you thought, and you're able to say, okay, I saw signs of that before, actually. You know, why was it that as soon as I met that person, I thought of an episode of Law and Order? Like, if something like that is happening to you, you learn through these experiences. You learn through every Mercury retrograde to trust your instincts a little bit more, to trust life a little bit more, and to allow things to have the process that they need as part of revealing what lessons are there for you as well. Well, I will stop there. Mercury retrograde is something I'm always talking about, and it's mainly because I'm asked about it so much. And I would say again, finally, I do want to leave this, and I know I said it before, but again, all my work is about affirming that the universe is wise and loving. Mercury retrograde is a time that we get to check in with ourselves to make sure we like the direction that we're going in, and to get more clear on a level of mind as to exactly what it is that we're dealing with, whether it's in consideration with shopping or what we're communicating or what we're perceiving. All of that becomes up for us to examine examine or re-examine to make sure we like the way that things are going. It becomes a great time to adjust course and to become honest with yourself. And from that place of understanding, you are able to, and we are able to achieve outcomes that become more very much to our liking. So now I will stop there. Thank you so much again for this moment with you. Thank you so much for reaching out, your communications, Facebook, Twitter, Google+, my website, nadiyashah.com, and on a bunch of other social media that I am on my YouTube channel. There's a whole bunch of links there. On my website, there's a whole bunch of links there, so you can reach out to me, ask me your questions as well, and I look forward to it. I really enjoy these interactions, and I thank you so much again for seeing me as some small part of your sacred journey. Until we connect again, take care.